out, but I have everything now. I want to be respectful of the time. It's a little after 11, so we will get started. Just one second. Okay. Let me gavel this in with my pen here. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our virtual hearing of the Environment, Sustainability, and Parks Committee. We are discussing docket 0219 as well as 1044. My name is Matt O'Malley. I am the District 6 City Councilor and Chair for the last 11 years of the Committee on the Environment. It's had several different names through the last decade, and today will be my last time chairing a hearing. So it's great to see all of you. Gosh, I'm getting emotional already. So delighted to be with you. We're discussing two different items, one of which I partnered with City Councilor Ed Flynn, who's been a great champion on this, and we're gonna really discuss both items essentially at the same. This is more of an open conversation. I wanted to acknowledge, in addition to Councillor Ed Flynn, we've also been joined by at-large Councillor Aaron Murphy, as well as District 8 Councillor Kenzie Bach, and I would venture a guess that several other councillors will join us. This is being streamed live, and any individuals who wish to testify may do so. I would urge them. We've got several folks in the queue, but if not, if anyone's watching this and would like to testify, you may apply for a link by emailing shane.pack, that's shane.pac @boston.gov. And we will make sure that everyone who wishes to testify has an opportunity to do so. This is a really exciting topic to discuss. We're discussing both EV infrastructure, electric vehicle infrastructure, as well as building our solar canopy, solar panel canopy, specifically over municipal lots. This is something that is not only a great policy to help encourage more individuals, more Bostonians to purchase electric cars, but also give them the support they need to grow. And as I've often said, every fiscal conservative ought to be an environmentalist, because if we can take advantage of this, if we can build PV panels over municipal lots, as Roxbury Community College has done to great success, you literally could generate hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, if it's scaled up enough, of energy costs. In addition to that, you are providing better protection for these municipal lots, for these cars. The fuel economy of a standard ICE is going to be better because you're not going to be blaring that air conditioning right away, because it'll be in a cooler spot. So the benefits are immeasurable. Again, the purpose of this hearing is to discuss these two topics. I can tell you that my team's been in touch with Mayor Wu's team. Obviously, she is someone who has been such a leader on the environmental movement and is absolutely committed to doing what she can to support this, and will continue to support it going forward. So this is for my last hearing. This is one I'm really looking forward to, because it's just going to be a great conversation, and seeing if in the new year there's some concrete policy action steps we can take to implement these really aggressive and important initiatives. But before we get to some opening statements from the administration, I'd like to ask my co-sponsor Ed Flynn for some opening comments, and thank you for your partnership and leadership, Ed Flynn.
And thank you, Councilor O'Malley, and appreciate your tireless leadership on environmental justice issues across the city. And before I get into my opening statements, I just wanted to say, during the last 4 years working closely with you, Councilor O'Malley, I learned a lot about environmental justice issues. It wasn't a top priority for me when I first started 4 years ago, but being exposed to these various subjects and learning from you and our colleagues, you made us a better council, and you made us more knowledgeable and educated on why it's important to address environmental justice issues. So just want to say thank you as a colleague, but you were also really a teacher as well. You mentored us on why these issues are important. So I appreciate that education and training from you, Councilor O'Malley. So thank you. So again, want to say thank you to Councilor O'Malley for chairing this hearing and for partnering with me on the hearing on expanding our electric vehicle infrastructure in our city. The negative impacts on pollution and carbon are something that my constituents in District 2 are unfortunately well aware of, with the history of respiratory diseases and other issues as well. Chinatown has been rated the worst air quality in the state of Massachusetts, according to the Union of Concerned Scientists. In fact, both myself and Councilor Wu at the time were at a press conference out in front of the Josiah Quincy School when the scientist came up with that study that said Chinatown had the worst air quality of any neighborhood in Massachusetts. And that's something that we knew about, but it's something we rededicated ourselves to making sure that we provide a safer and healthier environment for the residents. In South Boston, the Edison plant caused high rates of cancer, lupus, scleroderma for decades. I previously held hearings with Mayor Janey on public health disparities that we see in the South End and communities of color as well. In terms of sea level rise, in 2018, the Southie waterfront experienced serious flooding that shut down the Seaport Boulevard and literally had dumpsters floating down A Street. With our fight against pollution, climate change, sea level rise, it is critical to lower carbon and greenhouse gas emissions. And a significant driver of greenhouse emissions, as we're discussing now, is from transportation. And this hearing from Councilor O'Malley and I seek to discuss how we can tackle the emissions and pollution from vehicles through EVs, infrastructure, and electrifying our city's vehicle fleet. At the federal level, the bipartisan infrastructure bill by the Biden administration allocated almost $8 billion in funding to build EV charging stations across the country. They provide a tremendous opportunity for Boston to expand its EV infrastructure. In addition, the federal Build Back Better legislation would also increase tax credits for people purchasing EVs from union labor to $12,000. With funding and potential tax incentives from federal legislation in car companies transitioning to electric as well in the next years ahead, we need to talk about our vehicle fleet and whether the city of Boston can accelerate our expansion to EV infrastructure, whether that can be required at new construction developments in the city as well, but also at our municipal buildings, facilities, our schools, libraries, municipal parking lots, as well as street parking. I know that Melrose recently partnered with National Grid to install a new kind of electric vehicle charger that's mounted 10 feet away above from the street on city power poles, which can make it easier for residents to charge their EV. Perhaps Boston can consider something similar. I know that the city has plans to switch the municipal fleet to EVs as well. This means that we should have a high demand for EV in the future. We want residents who buy EV to be readily available charging stations for them to charge their electric vehicle, and allow residents who are even thinking about buying EVs to know that they can conveniently access a charging station nearby, hopefully. This is a timely discussion with federal legislation aimed at EV infrastructure, tax incentives, as well, and our car companies transitioning to electric. It's critical that the city of Boston discuss accelerating our plan. We have great confidence in Mayor Wu. Accelerating our vehicle fleet and EV charging stations at new developments, our public facilities, schools, and municipal lots, as I mentioned, as well as ideas regarding street parking to meet the demand of EVs and further incentivize residents to buy EVs in the transition period. Councilor O'Malley, I'm looking forward to this conversation, learning from the administration team as well. Thank you for the administration team and our colleagues as well on the city council that also provide tremendous leadership on this important issue. Thank you, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you very much, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Kenzie Bach, do you have any opening statement? You are muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's definitely bittersweet to be with you for your last hearing of the committee. And I'll just echo Councilor Flynn in saying how grateful and I think the whole city is for your leadership in the environmental space. And it's going to be a big void for all of us to fill. So hopefully there will be many people stepping up to be the multiple Matt O'Malleys of the next term on the council. Yeah, just very, very grateful for that and glad to be here. Certainly, I intend to be one of them. Yeah, and I would just say both of these are critical. Two quick notes is just, I think when we're talking about solar on municipal buildings, that the Boston Housing Authority should also be a piece of the conversation. And I know it's something that folks there are looking to lead on, and thinking about the intersection with the green jobs piece that we've all been working on with Chief White Hammond, I think is really important. And then with EV infrastructure, I mean, it just seems to me like, we want it everywhere and I think as we modeled and as you really helped us model in the city, the same way that we started with saying, let's do carbon neutral buildings on the municipal side. And that helps us then drive the private world to doing that as well. Absolutely think mushrooming out our EV infrastructure and municipal lots and in terms of converting our fleet and then being able to say to private folks go and do likewise, I think is very powerful. I also want to stress that to me, it's very important that we invest in EV infrastructure in lots, both municipal ones and private ones, in part because I do think there's a little bit of a tension where we don't necessarily want to lock down all the curb space in the city that's currently being used by cars for cars. Right? Like there are places where it might actually be that we have other uses. And so there's a balance between making sure that EV infrastructure is super available and that at the same time, we're not saying this has to forever be a parking space because we put an EV hookup in. So that's definitely a kind of creative tension that I find myself thinking about in this space. But just super grateful for this hearing, both such pressing issues. And again, Mr. Chairman, really grateful for your leadership.
Thank you so much. And thank you for your great partnership, Councillor Bach. Councillor Murphy, did you have an opening statement?
Yes, thank you. And thank you to you, the chair, Councillor O'Malley, for holding this important hearing. And also, I feel fortunate that I have had this short but meaningful time with you on the council, not the 4 years that Councillor Flynn has or 2 that Kenzie Bach has, but definitely echo what Councillor Flynn said about your passion and leadership on environmental issues. And I definitely look forward to this conversation today and also the many more I know the council will continue to have in this upcoming year. So thank you very much.
Well said. Well, thank you all, colleagues. I appreciate it. So again, we have 2 different dockets that we're discussing here. One on sort of EV infrastructure, which is a specific hearing order authored by Councillor Flynn and myself, and the other on solar panels. So again, it's similar. Many people will be saying the same things. I want to try to frame the discussion. So we're going to begin with a focus on EV. We have a number of great leaders, colleagues, friends, partners in the work from the administration, of course, Chief Mariama White Hammond, Vineet Gupta from BTD, David Musselman, who is with Director of Municipal Energy Unit to the solar panels and municipal lots, Neil Janelowitz.
Close, Janowitz.
Janowitz, sorry, Neil. Neil
That's
Janowitz
right.
Jr., who's with ISD. I think Matt Warfield from BTD is with us. Ruth Lazaire is part of our expert panel. She's a Co-op Boston Metro East Community Liaison. And of course, Brian Glasscock with ISD. So I guess...
Councilor BPDA.
I'm so sorry, Brian. BPDA. I should know that.
That was an old hat. But
I think Brian and Vineet are the only 2 who have been in this building longer than I have. So I should have. So I'm going back to the old days. But great to see everybody here. So I guess for the EV, is that Chief White Hammond? Did you want to sort of kick things off? Vineet, I'm going to just throw to you guys. We'll just have an open conversation.
Sure. I'll just share a few opening statements. So. Hello, my name is Reverend Mariama White Hammond. I'm the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space for the City of Boston. I want to extend a thank you to the entire council for having me here today. Thank you to Councillor Flynn for co-sponsoring this hearing. And I want to say a particular thank you to Councillor O'Malley, who has shown great leadership in this committee for many years. I'm thankful to have been able to work with you in the environmental and open space issues in my time in this role. You've elevated these issues such that we will never go back to the days when it was hard to get people interested in these crucial matters. And nonetheless, while many will continue these conversations, your presence on the council will be missed. So It's great to be here for this your last hearing of this committee. So as you mentioned, I'm here with a group of staff from EEOS and the Streets Cabinet, Operations Cabinet, and the BPDA to discuss some strategies that the City of Boston can utilize to achieve our renewable energy, carbon neutrality, and accessible transportation goals. To begin, I'd like to mention some new steps that the city is taking to reduce vehicle emissions by accelerating the adoption of electric vehicles and other low emission transportation options in Boston, which I'm excited about both in my role and as an EV owner myself. I know that it makes a difference when your city takes leadership. I have a friend whose mother is probably going to swap out her EV and give it to her because she cannot find enough charging stations where she lives. So it is really important that we take leadership on this matter. To begin with, I would like to note that today, Mayor Wu announced new strategies to reduce vehicle emissions in Boston. And these steps consist of a new vehicle fleet utilization policy, which will reduce greenhouse gas emissions from the city's vehicle fleet, as well as expanded access to electric vehicle charging infrastructure and EV car share programs, which are particularly important in our environmental justice neighborhoods. I'd like to especially thank Bill Coughlin and Matt Bradley for their work in developing this policy, for really their leadership that began before, and now that there is increased interest, they have really been able to move this at a speed that reflects the urgency of the moment. The City of Boston maintains 1,200 vehicles in its fleet, which is not including our school buses and our public safety vehicles. The new fleet utilization policy will increase city workers' use of shared rather than individual vehicles. And that will reduce unnecessary vehicle purchases and accelerate the electrification of light-duty vehicles. And it also makes just a little bit easier on the parking matters if we don't have to have so many vehicles, but can be using them more efficiently. And this strategy can reduce approximately 1/4 of the greenhouse gas emissions from Boston's municipal operations. Mayor Wu has also committed to expanding the City of Boston's electric vehicle charging infrastructure in municipal lots with an additional 28 publicly accessible EV charging plugs to be installed in Nubian Square, Mattapan Square, Upham's Corner, and South Boston by the end of January 2022. And there will be 50 more EV charging plugs to be installed throughout 2022, again, making it much easier for residents to seriously consider electric vehicles and know that they will have the infrastructure they need to charge their cars. The last step is to add 4 additional electric car share vehicles to the Nubian Square areas through Good to Go, a partnership with Nuestra Comunidad and E for the Future. Those stations opened this summer on an extremely hot day. We were out there cutting the ribbon, sweating in the reality of climate change. And it's really great to see that that will be expanded to be even more accessible for more people. The last step is to add, finally, in Boston, transportation accounts for nearly 1/3 of our total greenhouse gases emissions, and 65% of which come from personal vehicles. About 25% of our transportation emissions come from people just getting around Boston. So these steps align with the city's carbon neutrality goals and expanding equitable access to transportation. You'll hear more about our solar policy from other members of the team, but I want to pass it over to Vineet Gupta from the Boston Transportation Department to go into a little greater depth.
Thank you, Chief. And just Vineet, before you go, when I was introducing other members of the administration, I neglected to mention my dear friend, the incomparable Allison Brezius, Commissioner of the Environment. So thank you, Dr. Brezius, for being. I think I got everybody else. Apologies if not. Vineet, the floor is yours, my friend.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Let me start by thanking you for the partnership that we've had over the last so many years. It's been a pleasure working with you and learning from you. Let me start by saying that if we want to meet our climate goals, first, the most important thing is to have more and more use of public transit, walking, getting people on bikes, and carpooling. However, to continue to reach our carbon neutrality goals, any remaining vehicles on our streets should be electric or should use zero-emission vehicles. We already have a solid foundation to go in that direction. Last year, the City of Boston published its zero-emission vehicle roadmap, or ZEV roadmap, the goal of that effort was to accelerate the adoption of electric vehicle charging and other clean fuel transportation. And to do that in a way that makes it convenient and affordable for our residents. The ZEV roadmap is driven by some aspirational goals. The most relevant to this conversation is that we want every household in Boston to be within a 10-minute walk of a publicly accessible EV charging station or a car share that is EV by 2030. And that goal goes hand in hand with providing access to EVs in areas that are generally underserved by quality public transportation. The ZEV roadmap also has a very specific action plan with a set of discrete recommendations. Some of those have already been implemented. For example, today, any large new development in Boston is required to set aside 25% of its parking spaces with an installed EV charger. The remaining 75% have to be EV ready for later installation. Of course, most developers have embraced this policy because they find that their development will actually be more viable, will attract tenants, and of course, reduce emissions. In addition to that, we have also started, as has been mentioned by Chief White Hammond, we have started to install electric vehicle charging stations and have established and are establishing partnerships with community groups to encourage adoption. I'm going to hand it over to Matt Warfield, who in the last year has been our person on the ground, a person who's been out there getting things implemented on the EV charging front. And he's here with BTD. And Matt will just give you a few more details on the actual installations that we are doing here. Thank you.
Thanks, Vineet. And Councillor O'Malley, I should mention, we didn't work together a lot, but I appreciated your work on particularly the small vehicles ordinance and sitting on that committee when we met. So certainly we'll miss your support on that. Yeah, so as Vineet mentioned, I've been leading the the work that we've been doing here out of the Transportation Department on our electrical vehicle program. And so with that, we've been working with the Eversource Make Ready program to install EV charging stations in our municipal parking lots. A baby has joined the call, or a toddler. And so, as was mentioned, our first, so we first launched in JP a while ago, Jamaica Plain, and then our next set of installations are in Roxbury, Mattapan, Dorchester, Hyde Park, Brighton, and Alston. And the thing about our municipal lots is that these are located out in the neighborhoods. So we're really expanding access to EV charging in areas of the city that haven't had it before. If you look at a map, most of our EV charging is concentrated downtown and around areas of Back Bay and South Boston, South End. And so, by the end of 2022, we'll have over 80 charging plugs available for people to use, mostly in neighborhoods. And we're also installing a couple of curbside locations. We've had charging stations on Cambridge Street for a number of years now. And we're expanding that slightly through our Mobility Hub project, the Go Hubs project, as well as in partnership with the Good to Go car share program near Bartlett Station. We're going to be adding another site there as well. And, I think one thing to note that we've been doing here is we've really been using public money and resources to expand this program as much as possible, working with Eversource. They are covering all the costs of the infrastructure. We've been taking advantage of state grants when available. We do currently have a grant submitted for level 3 DC fast charging, which are the quick charge chargers, significantly more pricey than level 2, but we would be able to install those in some lots if we get that grant. In terms of curbside charging, We do have a draft policy developed, and I think what was noted by Councillor Bach is that we want to consider where we can locate curbside charging stations because it's a significant investment, and we don't want to lock a curb into being used for car parking over the long term. And there's also a lot of limitations around street width, the items that are in the furniture zone, and just maintaining, accessible pathways throughout our city as we're considering these. And, we have certainly looked into streetlight charging and other things like that. And there's always, issues that arise that would need to be addressed in terms of, first of all, it's once we start tapping into streetlights, there's that risk of affecting a basic service that we provide to the city, which I know has been a concern. We have thought about ways to, at least on a temporary basis, allow residents to lay a cord from their house to charge their vehicle. That's a similar program that's been done in Seattle and some other places, where you use a ADA qualified cord cover, that while it's in use, they could do that. So we have a draft guidance on that, but it's just still in review. And like was mentioned, we're partnering with the Good to Go EV car share program. And we're also looking at ways to change our delivery vehicles as well. So we'll be launching a pilot e-cargo bike delivery program here come spring. And I think it's worth noting that there's been a lot of interest from other departments. We've spoken with Boston Public Schools, with Rexon Park. There's a lot of assets that the city owns out there that are off-street facilities. And at BTD, we can really only address and manage our BTD-owned assets. So I've been able to provide guidance and have conversations, but we don't have we can't manage the assets that are on Boston Public School property. So there is a need to combine this effort that can cut across agencies to some degree. And with that, I'll pass it back to Chief White Hammond.
Thank you, Matt, for providing that additional information. So as has been noted by Councilor O'Malley, we are looking both at EVs and also how we can expand solar. And so solar is another exciting opportunity to reduce our emissions and increase renewable energy production in Boston. And so we'll be looking particularly at solar roof arrays and solar canopies in municipal properties. Renew Boston Trust is a creative financing mechanism that allows us to purchase materials to generate renewable energy and retrofit our buildings with the money saved on our energy bills. We are in the process of moving that forward. And this program is exciting, in particular because it's self-funded, because the savings from the energy efficiency and renewable energy measures pay for themselves, as well as other measures that may not move forward if it didn't have resources available. So I'm going to pass it over to David Musselman, who's in charge of the Municipal Energy Unit, to speak more in detail about this program and the exciting place that it is right now.
Thank you. Councilor O'Malley, I also wanted to thank you for your leadership on community choice electricity, which is also a program I have responsibility for, and we're very pleased that it's out in the community and is saving our customers a lot of money, and will save a lot of money over the next 6 months as we've seen Eversource's rates go very high. I've been working on Renew Boston Trust for the last 4 years that I've been with the city. We've completed our first phase. We are in construction on the second phase and in development of a third phase. And so far we've spent or invested about $25 million. We are saving about $1.1 million a year in just straight energy savings. We also know that there are other sort of unquantifiable savings from reduced maintenance, plus we've improved the buildings in which we've done the work for both the workers in the building and our residents who use the buildings. In phase 1 and 2, we also reduced the carbon emissions from municipal operations by about 1.5%. So this is a pretty significant program. It's allowed us to expand beyond the traditional capital budget and to do work that needs to be done, but work that also advances our carbon goals. When we began Renew Boston Trust, we identified 266 buildings that are in the inventory of buildings that we can work on. And so far, we've been through about 36 of them. Our next phase will get into another 9, I think, on a deep dive. And then also we'll be looking at additional solar installations on about another 16 buildings. As a part of phase 1, we did install 3 solar installations, 2 rooftops at community centers. The Tobin and Roslindale community centers each have now rooftop solar. And we did 1 parking lot canopy at Boston Police Headquarters. With the completion of phase 1, that installed about 261 kilowatts of capacity. For phase 3, as we started looking at what we would do, we started with 30 buildings. We eliminated some of those based on some desktop audits, which identified too much shadow or insufficient space because of all of the other equipment that was on the roof, or the roofs were simply too old and we knew they would have to be replaced during the lifetime or the lifetime of the PV array, and we didn't want to have to go in, take it out, replace the roof, and then try and reset it. That greatly hurts the economics. So we're down to reviewing 19 sites. We're doing physical audits on those to make sure that they're structurally sound enough and that there aren't any sort of hidden issues that we would uncover when we started putting a bunch of equipment on the roof of a building. The 19 sites include 16 schools, or about 13% of the school buildings that the city of Boston has. By comparison, New York had a great big announcement earlier in 2021 where they were going to do work on 47 buildings, but that represents a little over 2% of their school buildings. So on a percentage basis, if we're able to complete this, this will be a very significant installation for us. If we're able to install all of it, it would add about 8 megawatts of solar capacity and generate about 8,700 megawatt hours a year, or about 5% of the city's current electric consumption for its operations. We're hoping to enter into the contract to do this in March or February or March rather, and to begin the work hopefully this summer to install them, and would complete that work over probably a 2-year period. Through Renew Boston Trust, we've done these through power purchase agreements for a number of reasons. First, there's no upfront capital required, so it allows us to do much more work beyond what was authorized in our capital budget. We reap the savings by paying a lower price for the solar generated electricity than we would to our electric supplier. And so there is a savings, and those savings are then used to help pay for other work in the Renew Boston Trust portfolio. So to help replace, toilets and, to save water, to replace HVAC equipment, to improve the efficiency of that and so forth. But another reason that we do it in this way is that private sector investors can take advantage of tax benefits that we are unable to take advantage of because we're not a taxpayer. So they pass those savings on to us through a lower purchase price for the electricity. And we also are receiving the benefits of the smart incentives, and those are used to reduce the costs. The PPA provider is then responsible for the operation and maintenance of the facility over the 20-year contract period. So that's also something that we don't have to be responsible for, and they have a proper incentive to do the work because they don't get paid if they're not generating. The solar power that we get is net metered, so that if we generate more than we would use at a particular facility, it is sold back to the grid, and that further offsets our price. Although in the most cases, our generation does not exceed the use at the particular building. We expect to use solar in additional buildings in RBT. And we also think it's a useful model. One other project that I'll mention that we've gone out in the past couple of weeks for is a request for qualifications for a photovoltaic and battery storage facility at the Moon Island Fire Training Center. This will provide power and also resilience at Moon Island, but also very importantly, it's going to provide a site for Boston firefighters and firefighters from surrounding communities to actually train with actual equipment that they're now seeing out in the field. There will be both a commercial size battery installation and also a consumer size, like a Tesla Powerwall, so that they can actually train on how to respond to fires and what to do when they see storage in place. And we think that the RFQ process that we're pursuing there will be something that we can use to help other departments, such as schools or transportation or parks, if they decide to go out and do additional PV procurements. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Rev, is that all from the administration? We'll get into great dynamite. So thank you all for framing that really, really well. I'm going to begin with my line of questioning and ask my colleagues to have it focused on EV charging for this first round. And then I know we have Ruth Lazaire, who's going to give a presentation. I believe Alphonse Knight may be joining us as well. So that's more specific on I believe some of the PV stuff, right? The solar stuff, Ruth. Okay, so we're going to do questions from counselors, then we'll get to you, Ruth, and then we'll get into questions on PV. I guess I'll kick things off very briefly. So we're at 80, Matt, we're at 80 EV plugs in municipal lots right now. And how well used are they, I guess? I would imagine anecdotally, as someone who's driven an electric vehicle for the last number of years, I'd often park at Cambridge Street just because I didn't have a level 2 charger at home. And I wanted to show that it was being used so that the city would build more of them. And now it's very difficult to get a spot there. So what's the usage been of those, would you say?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So right now we have just 10 plugs. So we have the ones on Cambridge Street, and then we have 3 stations in the JP lot.
Yeah.
By the end of right now we're installing an additional 28 plugs, and so those will be active by January. But throughout 2022 is when those additional stations be installed. But yeah, so the ones that we do have active right now are very popular. I don't know if you've seen the ones in the JP lot. They're often utilized. We've already gotten requests to see if we can expand them. Add some additional ones at the lot. So the demand is certainly there. I get inquiries from people that say, I would like to purchase a EV. Are there going to be more charging stations becoming available? So very, very highly used.
I would say I get one email or phone call or direct message a week saying, I live in a multifamily unit or multifamily building. I don't have a driveway. I would love to have an EV. When can we get them? So I think that's really exciting to see. We're going to go from 10 this year to 80 a year from now. I would urge you to continue to even scale that up more. What's the cost of installing just one plug to the city?
Sure. So the biggest cost is the infrastructure. So it's the, making the electrical connection, any transformers needed, switch boxes. Fortunately, Eversource has been covering that cost through their Make Ready program. So what we're having to pay for is the station itself. And so we're doing a service program rather than owning the station outright. We just pay a flat fee and it covers everything, which is, it helps us by not requiring a lot of additional staff time. If an issue arises, we just calls up the company and say, this needs to be addressed, and they take care of it.
And what's the flat fee?
So the flat fee for a level 2, a dual plug, it's about $2,400 a year.
And is that's with charge points?
ChargePoint, correct. That's who we're currently with.
Did we have to do an RFP or RFQ to select? I mean, charge points, I think the sort of the gold standard, the one that we see the most. Did we have to do an RFP for that?
So we looked into a couple of different ways to procure, and what we ended up doing was using the state contract. So they have VEH 102 is a state contract where they already went through the RFP process, and so we just collected bids through that contract.
And is that $2,400 fee, does that include maintenance? So if a machine breaks down, ChargePoint will fix it?
It includes maintenance.
So you pay for the electricity that goes to ChargePoint, which gets their percentage, and then they pay the electric company. Do we get a percentage of that?
Yeah, so they get, so the electricity is paid through ChargePoint. They take 10%, and then everything else comes back to us. And so it goes towards.
Great. So how much revenue do we generate on those?
I mean, I think we're generating enough to cover our electricity charges, but we're certainly not covering that charge we're putting out per year. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but we are likely covering the electricity charges, but not that $2,475 that we're paying.
And the Tremont Street spots are all at metered spots, and it's a high demand one. So that's, I'm just trying, it's probably, $8 or $9 to park there for 4 hours. There's no meters, obviously, in Jamaica Plains, municipal lot that doesn't have one. I would just argue, and maybe it's the freedom of not running for re-election, but I think as an EV drivers, I understand you'd want to keep costs down. Obviously, it's an equity issue, but folks would be happy to pay a little bit more if it meant having more access to chargers, because you are going to obviously save the money. So I think that's something that if cost is ever an issue, that's something that could be addressed, and just scaling this up as quickly as possible. And then my last question for this round is, with the president's infrastructure bill, there's obviously $7.5 billion, I think, earmarked for the entire country. But Vineet, I see you nodding your head. Has there already been sort of ideas on how we can leverage some of that that's specifically earmarked for growing out this network, of how we be able to grow the number of sites and neighborhoods?
We've started that discussion, and with Commissioner Busius and myself, we'll be following up on that. Great. Once they have more specific programs. It's just been a general announcement so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously there will not likely be, but it's great to see. I love the fact that it's Nubian Square, Mattapan Square, Upham's Corner, South Boston for sort of the next round. I wouldn't be doing my job as a district councilor if I didn't say West Roxbury. I hope we can get in there as well. We have a number of municipal lots that actually abut 3 commuter rail stations. So I think that's another opportunity, perhaps working with the T. But I think this is all exciting. I really am impressed at how everyone's been working on this. And clearly with the with our new mayor, she's committed to this as well. As a fellow Chevy Bolts driver, she and I both drive the same car. This is exciting and welcome news indeed. So fabulous work, everybody. Councillor Flynn, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. I just have a couple of questions for the administration team. Are there any considerations for the city to establish programs or provide any type of partnerships with incentives for like commercial lots, such as a supermarket, to provide EV charging infrastructure to residents? So when you would go into a supermarket to go shopping, maybe you would also have the opportunity to charge your car as well. Just seeing if you're thinking about those types of whether it's public-private partnerships or working together with supermarkets or any other commercial lot.
And Matt, do jump in, but Councillor Flynn, that's definitely a very good idea. We've tried to engage privately owned lots, owners of privately owned lots. I know that some grocery stores, I think Whole Foods has electric vehicle charging in their lot, but it's a direction we should definitely go in and have started some initial conversations. We're very focused on trying to make these charging stations publicly accessible, so that everybody has access.
Thank you, Vineet. I think maybe my final question is, I know the city would contract this out to a company, and the fee also includes, maintenance fee and upkeep of the equipment. But do we see any scenarios where, this system or this infrastructure unfortunately could break down and leave the charging station without adequate equipment to do the charging, and waiting for a period of time for the company to come in to replace the equipment? Are we confident that once something breaks down, that this contractor would come, within an hour to fix it, or does the contractor come, 4 days later? So those types of issues are important to me.
Yeah, Vineet, I can comment on that one. So with the charging as a service model, it's a really great setup where they're required to have something fixed, within reason. It doesn't require ordering, like electronics part or something, turned around within a day. And so we already had issues come up where, say, a cord broke or something along those lines, and they've been out there in a matter of hours and gotten it fixed. We're working with a local company, it's Voltrek, through ChargePoint. And so they're located nearby. They work a lot in this area. And so they respond fairly quickly. And that's why the service model, in my opinion, is better than outright ownership, because we did have some issues with the Cambridge Street stations previously, where we didn't really have a maintenance contract or an idea of how they would get fixed. We ended up having to replace those stations, which they're both now currently also under the charging as a service model.
And so when you contract this service out to a private company, we also had a discussion yesterday, and I know Mayor Wu came out with a plan yesterday in procurement in opening up contracting to women-owned companies and companies owned by people of color as well. Is this type of business available for women-owned companies or minority-owned companies, or are we able to somehow include them in the process to see if they might be interested in getting involved in this field?
Absolutely. And so Voltrek is a woman-owned company. They're WBE, and they are actually registered with the city through the equitable procurement program. But yeah, I mean, it's absolutely, there's only so many companies out there that do this kind of work. But work on electric vehicle charging is something that most electricians can do. So there is opportunities there to bring in more local workforces.
And just my final question, and I always take the opportunity to, on these council meetings, because the public is watching, is to educate the public too. And I might not know the answer as well, but can you just go over what it means to charge a car? What is the process? How long does it take? What are the issues? What goes on? Just so that we have an understanding of it and the public has an understanding of it.
Absolutely. So I would just say, start off, if anyone has access to the internet, you can just go to boston.gov/recharge Boston, and there's a number of resources there that would explain this in greater detail than I can. But essentially, there's 3 different levels of charging that are out there. You have level 1, which is a standard plug outlet in your house. The level 2, which is what we're talking about mostly, is the same equivalent of, say, a washer dryer. That's a 240 volt. And then you have the level 3, which is the quick charge stations. A level 2 typically puts out 7 kilowatts an hour. And so if you think about when you're looking at an electric vehicle, you look at the capacity of the battery, and that'll tell you how long it'll take that vehicle to charge based on what the output of the charging station is. So an example, we own a Pacifica plug-in hybrid. We have a number of kids, so we need a large vehicle. It's a 16 kilowatt battery, and using a level 2 station, it takes us 2 hours to fully charge it because you have the 7 kilowatt output, 16 kilowatt battery, and so the add up from there. The fast chargers are anything from 50 kilowatts to 150 kilowatts. So again, you can do the math to see how long it would take to charge. But it's also the type of vehicle you have and how fast it can receive that charge. So some older model Nissan Leafs can only take like 3 kilowatts an hour. But as new models come out, they're more efficient. They can charge more quickly along those lines.
Thank you, Matt, for those answers. I appreciated it. It was very helpful. Councilor O'Malley, I have no further questions.
Thank you. And just to that point, the technology is evolving in such a way that they literally have these like hyper fast chargers in places in Europe, which is not terribly unlike the amount of time it would take to fill a gas tank with gasoline that can actually get a really good charge. So we're seeing the technology evolve very, very quickly. I'm very excited to hear that there's a level 3 charger in the horizon for Boston. Councillor Murphy, did you have any questions?
Hello. Yep. So no different questions, but thank you for those questions that councillors have already asked.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much. So I think we're going to now, unless there's any other questions from Councillor Flynn or any other statements that haven't yet been said. Okay, I would now like to invite Ruth Lazare, Co-op Power Boston Metro East Community Liaison. I believe you may have a presentation. I don't know, did you have like a PowerPoint?
Yes, something very brief.
Perfect. Okay, so I just want to make sure, I don't know if it's Carrie or Candace helping with us on the back end, but do we have Ruth's PowerPoint presentation?
I can share my screen as well.
Then done, even better. All right, the floor is yours. Welcome, Ruth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Ruth Lazare. I am an outreach intern at Co-op Power Boston. I have been for about 2 years now. Councilor O'Malley, I just wanted to start off by thanking you for putting this on. I have not worked with you before, but I have heard of the work that you've done, and I'm very appreciative of you sort of laying the groundwork in this area to get these conversations going. So thanks a lot. And it's such an honor to be amongst all of you today, especially Miss Mariama. It's great running into you all the time. So basically, I'm going to share my screen right now and give just a brief presentation. So the organization I'm a part of is called Co-op Power Boston. We used to go by Co-op Power Boston Metro East. And we basically are a community energy co-op that's working on building energy infrastructure in Boston. We do have other co-ops in other parts of the state as well, but for these purposes, of course, we're just gonna focus on Boston. So, of course, we're very much in support of installing solar infrastructures in terms of solar canopies and rooftop retrofits. So basically, just to show you what kind of activity that this infrastructure can create, it's not just, it's more than solar panels. It starts a movement. It empowers people who have for a long time historically been disempowered. So that's sort of a perspective that I want to highlight about the importance of supporting these measures going into the city of Boston, is that there's a lot more that can come with them rather than just, reducing an energy bill. So basically, we work with communities, local communities and municipalities in the Boston area to implement, their solar energy plans by helping them walk through the often arduous process of figuring out financing and, getting people to come together and rally behind, something like this. So the more solar that we have in the city, the better, because this will allow more people who often are left out of the conversation to be able to participate in Boston's energy transition. This isn't something that the city can do alone. It needs the support, of course, of the community members, and that's what we're here for. So just to show you, this is just a highlight of some of the things that we have accomplished. And this is just really to display, what supporting measures like these in the city can really spur in terms of community engagement, getting people to come together and growing their economies and, getting rid of, bad things, harmful things for them within their communities, such as, pollution or extreme heat waves and things like that. So this is just, something that shows what investing in these infrastructures can do in a community. It really revitalizes an area. So if that's a goal for Boston, of course, then this idea is a no-brainer. So basically, we can always work together with the city of Boston. We focus mostly on low income and communities of color as well, because they are often the ones that are, last in the conversation or not really considered. And they're going to be the ones that would be suffering the brunt of the effects of climate change. So we try to make sure that we make them front and center as well, because, you're only as, good as, the least taken care of person in your group, basically. So we can't really talk about achieving goals of being net zero by 2030 or 2050 if we don't include these often excluded groups in these conversations. So we know that municipal buildings and parking lots are found everywhere in Boston communities, and utilizing these spaces for solar can expand our capacity to do more of this kind of work and to increase resiliency in the communities that they serve. So the great thing about the solar infrastructure is that it's very flexible to fit the needs of any site. You can scale it up, you can scale it down, you can do a canopy system if you don't have a suitable roof, or you can do a roof if you don't have enough parking spots. So it really is, we don't really have to reinvent the wheel here when it comes to implementing this in our city. This has been replicated across the country in many different cities. As you can see, I included some photos here of, parking lot carports, and solar on government buildings as well in different cities across the state. So it's not too, it's a very, very flexible thing. And that's what makes the process a lot quicker in implementing these as well. So of course, the benefits of supporting solar infrastructure in Boston is that it can provide long-term savings, job creation, economic growth, reducing the island heat effect, which seems to be getting worse every single year. I know when I used to live in South Boston as I was probably about 7, 8 years old. I remember it was extremely hot, usually during the summers, and the pavement and not a lot of trees and things like that. So having those carport infrastructures can definitely help with that. Building resilience in the frontline communities before it's too late. And it will, we as a city are always talking about wanting to make Boston net zero by 2030. So we definitely, in order to achieve that goal, this is something that we definitely have to support, expand, and scale. So yeah, that's really all that I have. If anyone wants a little bit more insight in terms of how we sort of incorporate the community and solar together within Boston, feel free to reach out to myself or Alphonse. Alphonse was not able to make it today, unfortunately, but he definitely expresses his support for this. And I definitely am all for it. And I'm so excited to see where Boston is going to be within the next 5-10 years with all of these new infrastructure changes and things. And Boston's always a city that's changing. So I'd love to see, what it's going to be doing in the future and in a more inclusive future as well. So that's all I have for today.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruth. Really appreciate it. And please stick around. We may have some questions for you and want to obviously also invite you if there are any questions when we get into the specific PV panels, solar panels discussion, but really appreciate your great work and delighted to be with you virtually. So I'm going to start with you, David. You talked about, I think, 19. There are 19 sites, sort of city-controlled sites, where there are PV panels now, or are slated to be. Is that right?
There are a few more that were put in during the Obama era economic development. So there's a handful that are sort of historic. Renew Boston Trust has put on 3, and we're evaluating 19 additional sites.
Oh, evaluating 19 additional sites. And that includes the Moon Island project?
Sorry, that would make it 20.
20. So
Yeah.
Moon Island, I feel like I did a hearing on Moon Island 5 or 6 years ago. And that's it. What's the holdup on that? I think it's great. It's a wonderful thing. It'll help power, a city resource. There's ample room. There's no, I mean, we're going to be able to capture a lot of energy there. What's the holdup on Moon Island?
We received a grant from Mass Clean Energy Center to do this development project. So it's been a process of getting prepared to go out. There have been a number of different potential initiatives out at Moon Island that predate me. There was an idea of putting a wind turbine and putting large solar on the former wastewater treatment facility out there, and but we're now focused on this particular project because we've got state grant funding that is going to help pay for a significant part of it, and it took a while to get that pulled together and to work with the fire department to get it prepared to issue, and now we're in the process of waiting for responses. So we're hoping to complete that procurement probably in the spring and start work on it by summer.
Okay, that's hopeful. And again, anything we can do to really, the urgency is so needed.
Yep.
Specifically, this hearing, I wanted, and apologies for not doing it at the offset. Kate Reyes is a dear friend and constituent of mine whom we will hear from shortly during public testimony. Kate and I met in the before times, probably a month before the whole world shut down in March of 2020, a little coffee shop in Jamaica Plain. And Kate said, wouldn't it be great if we could build some PV canopy over this municipal lot behind us? And that's really been, I think, a lot of the impetus for the work that I've been doing specifically on this topic. It seems to me that there are a number of other cities, Santa Cruz, California, for example. I mean, we've seen it with the BPD lot, we've seen it at RCC. It just makes sense. Admittedly, every municipal lot isn't going to be a good candidate for solar panels, but just to create a canopy it just seems like the benefits are immeasurable right now. So I guess, what's the thought? Have we done any sort of analysis on what municipal lots we could use? The cost of just getting them up and running, the electricity that would generate for the city, the protection for cars for not only in the extreme heat in the summertime, but of snow and other things in the wintertime. Do you, I don't know, David, if this is for you, or Chief Floyd Hammond, if you want to jump in here?
Yeah, so I think one of the things to note is that there are some lots where it's just obvious. We know that it's going to remain a lot. One of the challenges has been that's been a holdup. So, for instance, in Nubian Square, there's a lot of planning that's happening. And the question is, are we sure that lot is going to remain a lot for 20 years? Because if it's not, if there's a possibility that 3 years from now, people are going to think, so we should build something there, then it does present some challenges. So I think that is one of the core issues, is that in places where the comprehensive planning has been completed, then it makes it much easier to know that that's going to be remaining. And not all of that has been done in some instances.
Totally fair point. But I guess I don't want us to use sort of the potential for either development or surrounding development when I'm sure there's a handful of spots that we could look at right now that we know aren't going to change or whatever, have the access of sun that would make them work. And I'm just curious, is that something either BTD or your, cabinet or, BPDA, perhaps Brian is looking at? I know BPDA, to their credit, John Dalzell has done a great job really pushing new developments on installing some of this infrastructure, but specifically for building out our solar canopy, are we doing any sort of inventory right now of potential sites?
So I could say, and Dave can talk about it. In RBT, we've particularly tried to stay away from sites we think that there's a high likelihood of shifting or changing. But I think if we got a clear signal that a site wasn't going to change, then I think that Renew Boston Trust does offer opportunities for those kinds of projects.
Okay, that's fair. Anyone else wanted to sort of jump in on that?
I will say that among the sites that we're looking at in phase 3, it includes parking lots adjacent to 4 schools as part of that, because it is, as you said, a great opportunity. It's an open space. It'll improve the parking for the teachers. It doesn't generally impact the number of spaces available. So where we've been able to do that, that is something that we certainly have looked at. It's not always possible because sometimes the parking lot's shaded by the building, or there's some other reason why. But where we've been able to identify a high likelihood, that's
totally get that.
Continuing to develop.
Totally get that. I'm passionate, as is my young associate, Margot, who you may be hearing in the background as she's having her lunch. I guess, though, and I don't need to be redundant because I think we're all literally and figuratively on the same page here, but I often cite the Hastings Elementary School, which is the first net zero school built in the Commonwealth. They built a solar array over their parking lot. Admittedly, it's not the city of Boston. There aren't the same constraints, and they generate, enough energy to power the entire school, which is obviously a huge power drain. So I do think that the opportunity here is something that's great. And I know we all agree with it. So, we talk about certain community centers. I think you said Rosendale, and I forget what the other site was.
Tobin.
The Tobin and Mission Hill, other great places where we can grow that. Is there a portion of City Hall's roof that would be a prime candidate for PV panels? I mean, that's perhaps not with some of the larger buildings surrounding us, but, just really looking at ways that we can fit it in, it's going to have a huge impact. And particularly with net metering, we do this at a large enough scale, we can generate profit for taxpayers, which is just a remarkable thing.
We did look at City Hall, and because of all of the other equipment that's up there and the shading issues, it didn't, at this point, pencil out. So we won't be doing it in this round. But something we'll continue to watch, and as the technologies advance, the issues may change, right? If things become more efficient and you can get a lot more energy density out of the same amount of space, the economics may change. So we'll continue to watch it, but we are looking at the buildings that at least we're evaluating as part of the Renew Boston Trust, and in each case are looking at potential solar capacity as one of the measures there, because we agree with you, and it is a net profit center or savings center that helps pay for the other work that we do under Renew Boston Trust.
And you are, please go ahead.
I was going to say, it's also worth noting, Councilor O'Malley, that until phase 3, schools were not deeply included in Renew Boston Trust because they have their own challenges around construction. And so this will really be the first go round of really trying to figure out how we get all the construction done while the kids are not in the building as much as we possibly can. And so I think that, but I do know, in speaking with Councilor, to keep speaking with Mayor Wu now, she is really invested in seeing out how we can accelerate more renewables with BPS. And so I think that that will give us even more, this first round will give us some clear information. And I think her priorities will also give an additional impetus to really see how we, particularly our school buildings, are taken to the next level in terms of their net zero, as you were mentioning with Hastings.
Great. Fabulous. That's great. And then I would just end by saying, you know, the Moon Island, I think, is such a unique site. Looking also not only at solar, but wind turbines along Boston Harbor, I think would be amazing. I'm a big proponent of Cape Wind. I actually think it only adds to that beautiful view of the ocean and seeing energy being created. So anything we can do. Last question, David, do we know how much energy we're currently creating with our existing, admittedly small sort of renewable infrastructure, municipal run?
Yeah, it's about 500 megawatt hours a year, 600 megawatt hours a year, somewhere in that range. We're hoping in the next phase to increase that by well over tenfold,
Wow.
which would be about 5% of the city's current electrical use.
Well, I think that is an aggressive but an achievable goal, and absolutely add my voice to support it. If we could say 5% of our power is being created through municipal and renewable infrastructure, that was something that I know would be something we would all be proud of. So I love big goals, and I love doing what we can to support them, and I hope in my next role I'll be able to support it as well. So thank you for your great work. Councilor Flynn, did you have any questions specifically on solar panels?
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. I don't have any specific questions. I listened to the conversation, learned a lot about the conversation. Just want to say thank you to the administration team that's here and in the community as well. It's an important discussion, and I'm continuing to learn more about this important initiative. So thank you, Councilor O'Malley, and thank you to the city officials as well and community partners.
One last thing, I do think, I know that PFD is not on the call, but I do want to note that a lot of the work that we do requires a really strong partnership with PFD. And we've been able to work with them. And I just want to note that for more acceleration, there will need to be more resources available so that we have the project managers to make these move. We could have done even more had we more resources from PFD to be able to do that. So I just want to note, as they go forward, I'm sure that they are going to be requesting more resources for project managers, and whether they have those or not has direct impact on whether or not we're able to move all of these projects. So I do want to make sure I will thank them for the work that they've done with us, and note that they will need more resources in order to manage accelerated projects.
Valid points all. So I appreciate that. Thank you, Rev. I don't have any further discussions. I do want to get into our public testimony, but Ruth, as you've been a great panelist, happy if you had any thoughts or other questions before we get into public testimony.
No, this has all been great. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, I see. I don't know if they're in the room yet, but I know Shane or Candace or Kerry will get them in for public testimony. The first person I have is Bob Tempowski of Rosendale. Mm-hmm. And then Loie Hayes, Malia Khan, and Kate, and my dear friend Kate Reyes. Well, they're all my dear friends, but Kate was the one that helped join us. Bob is not here. Loie is not here. So we're going to go to Malia Khan and Kate Reyes for public testimony.
Okay, can I begin?
You sure can. Thank you. Welcome.
All right, great. Well, good morning. My name is Malia Khan. I am a resident of Boston, Massachusetts. And first, I just wanted to take the time to thank and express my appreciation to Councilors Flynn and O'Malley for your leadership in filing these dockets. The City of Boston has committed to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. And some of the most vital ways that we will get there as a city are by installing solar panels on municipal parking lots and buildings, investing in electric vehicle charging infrastructure, and electrifying the City of Boston's vehicle fleet. So as a resident of Boston, I have seen firsthand the impact of dirty car exhaust on ecosystems, air quality, and human health. I live in the South End, which, Councilor Flynn, you are, seen you around quite a lot around my neighborhood. And every person I talk to that owns a car here wants to buy an electric vehicle, but is worried they will not have access to charging stations. Neighborhoods are experiencing firsthand the negative impacts of climate change on their communities and the public health impacts of our air pollution. They see switching to an electric vehicle as a personal decision they have the power to make that would make a positive change in their lives, and their families' lives, and their kids' lives. But the fear of being stranded without a charging station is halting them in their tracks. This fear leaves them no choice but to continue to buy cars that contribute to these emissions, the emissions that we want to reduce. Ensuring reliable access to charging stations would make this decision to switch to an EV a no-brainer for so many residents. I know a few families that live out here in my neighborhood that have kids that want to switch to EVs, that have expressed their desire and their interest. But as I mentioned before, they feel they can't do so because of a lack of infrastructure set up in place. We are all gathered here today to reduce these emissions, and we can do that by investing in electric vehicles throughout Boston. This is a very possible, realistic solution to one of the city's most pressing problems. And we can do this by using the ARPA funds that are readily available for us. I want to conclude by thanking once again Councilors Flynn and O'Malley for their leadership on these dockets. And I hope that we can move forward and create more electric vehicle infrastructures for residents throughout the South End. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well said, and appreciate your taking the time to join us today. Ms. Khan, thank you. Ms. Reyes, great to see you. Welcome. The floor is yours, and thank you for letting me buy you a cup of coffee, or maybe you bought the cup of coffee all those months ago and bringing us to this moment.
I cannot tell you how thrilled I am to be here. When I met Councilor O'Malley in the before times, we dreamt of advancing solar and EV infrastructure in the city of Boston, which I am passionate about. I have lived in Jamaica Plain for more than 40 years now and have been personally, my partner and I both own EVs and are committed to being part of the resiliency solution in the city of Boston. We as a city can be that leader on the hill for the rest of the country to show that renewables are possible, and they're possible within the municipal infrastructure. And so I'm going to be extremely brief. I really am grateful now that Councilor Flynn has joined, Councilor Murphy, Councilor Bach. This is exciting. The Mayor Wu is behind this. I think right now what I'd like to say is, can we get the pilot program going in Jamaica Plain? Communities, as Ruth Lazar put it so brilliantly, communities are what we need to show that this is possible. Building community support for this kind of innovation around their schools, around our municipal parking lots, around our municipal buildings, the community will really need to be engaged and involved. So I personally want to step up and say I'd like to help do that in Jamaica Plain. I think the enthusiasm is here. I've spoken to the JP Business and Professional Association. They're excited about it. Our parking lot is one that I don't think will ever go away because there's no parking on Center Street, and we like it for our restaurant now, our outdoor dining. So I think that is going to be a proof of concept that could happen in 2022. So I'm asking publicly, David Musselman, can I have a meeting with you? And to see if we can advance at least one parking lot and see how well this can go. So with that, I just want to say thank you to Councilor O'Malley for, I'm going to miss you terribly, but thank you for making this all possible along with Councilor Flynn today, and I appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. And I would echo, I will be a private citizen, and within, I guess now about a little less than a month from now. And I too think Jamaica Plain would be a superb site for a pilot program. So I want in on that meeting, David, with Kate to do our best to lobby you and to lobby all our great elected officials. Councilor Flynn, did you have some concluding remarks before we gavel this out?
Yes, thank you, Councilor O'Malley. I just wanted to respond to Malia Khan's comment. I think the comments were right on. Is the residents of the city want to see city government provide these charging stations before residents actually make a major purchase of an electric vehicle. So I think it's upon city officials to educate and produce these electrical vehicle stations so that residents feel confident enough to go out and make a major investment such as an electric vehicle. But I don't think residents will do that until they see a commitment in infrastructure improvements from the city that we're taking this as a top priority. So I think it's upon city officials to show some results, and then I think in leadership, and then I think residents will have the confidence in us in the city to go out and buy electrical vehicles. Malia, did I summarize that? Your comments, okay?
Yes, that was actually great. I really appreciate your input on that. And I agree. I think that is the only way that folks will feel comfortable enough to actually go out and buy electric vehicles if they know that they have something that they can rely on. They need to charge these cars to use them, right? So thank you once again, Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Malia, and thank you, Kate. And Councilor O'Malley, thank you for taking me out of turn. I don't have any closing remarks. I just want to say thank you, Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Before I gavel this hearing out, I just want to sort of explain theoretically, as these are hearings, there's no action that we'll have to take at our next council meeting, but I'll be summarizing just the incredible, the good news coming from the Wu administration and some really, really aggressive steps and commitments, and right off the bat, some promises that are going to be made in this space, both our EV charging infrastructure, as well as looking at building solar canopies, looking at growing our renewable energy infrastructure. And then when the new council convenes in January, I am quite certain that Councilors Bach and Murphy and Flynn and so many others are going to continue to push this work. So there's an opportunity to continue working it together. We wanted to have this hearing before we gavel out for the year just to really raise the issue. And I think we're already seeing some really positive commitments from the administration. As this will be my last hearing chairing, although not as I will look forward to testifying on this and many issues next year and beyond. I think back to 11 years ago this month when I was sworn into this body, and I got my first, like most people, get a direct deposit of a paycheck, and I got my pay stub. And I called the HR to try to opt out of receiving the pay stub because city councilors' salaries are set by statute and they don't change, and I don't need it. It's just more paper, it's more waste. And I couldn't opt out of it. There was no mechanism in place in 2010 to opt out of getting a pay stub. It literally, it was one of the first resolutions I did. It took an act of the council to allow for the nearly 20,000 city employees to at least have the opportunity to opt out of getting a paper pay stub. And I remember when I did that, I had a former councilor, no names, who accused me of being cruel because I was getting rid of someone's job, whosever job it was, to stuff those pay stubs into envelopes to then deliver to their relevant departments. Of course, it wasn't about getting someone's job. The person could be doing something else and something they probably enjoyed a lot more. But I tell that anecdote to say, My God, in 11 years, the environmental movement has grown by leaps and bounds. It was difficult to get opt out of pay stubs 11 years ago. And now this city is taking some incredibly important steps as it relates to climate justice, as it relates to saving the planet. And you all have been so kind with your words about me. It's not about me. It's not about me at all. It's about Malia. It's about Kate. It's about Ruth. It's about the countless volunteers who spend hours every day working on these things for no pay, for no glory, sometimes for dealing with the frustrating process of dealing with us in elected and appointed office, but they do it because we have no other choice. Climate change is the existential threat that we are all living through. And I am so proud to have had the honor of working with the incredible warriors, the advocates in this space from every corner of our city who've really put their time, treasure, and blood, sweat, and tears to make sure that we do the right thing as a city and that we lead the way. You've heard a beautiful little voice in the background. It's my 1-year-old daughter. We do this for Margot. We do this for every little Bostonian across this city because we have no other choice. The work is too important. And each and every one of you, to a person, I know has been such a huge leader in this space. And it has been the true joy and privilege of my professional life to have worked with you over these last 11 years. And I can't wait to continue to work with you guys in a new capacity going forward. So on behalf of Councillor Flynn, Councillors Bach, Councillor Murphy, thank you to the remarkable central staff, Shane Pack, Candice Morales, Kerry Jordan, just the incredible council team, to my chief of staff, Jessica Morris, and Anna Fonseca and Michael Giordano, who all prepped for this. The hearing on dockets 0219 and 1044 stands as adjourned. Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Councilor Malley.